Welcome to the Earthworks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hey again, everybody. This is Kevin Hicks, and I'm here with another Earthworks podcast. It's been a while since I've done one, and speaking of it's been a while, this may, as I mentioned offline, this may be the longest wait I've had to get a guest on. Mr. Jon Kiger with TurfNet is on, and John and I started talking, I think you said 13 months ago, John, about doing this?
It would have been the show in Phoenix.
Yeah. So we finally pinned him down, and I'm excited to have you. We're going to go a little off topic with some personal stories and talk about kind of how he got to where he is now. And John, thanks so much for finally joining me.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So we're gonna, like I said, you started going on a couple of stories of your early life and kind of how you got to where you are today. And I said, now just hold those until we can hit the record button so we can get them recorded and on the podcast. But let's tell us just a little bit about kind of who you are, and then we'll get into the early stuff, which I think is fascinating, and we'll just build from there.
Okay. Well, my title is Director of Media and Membership Sales. Okay. And so the first responsibility is to recruit advertisers and sponsors for the various things that we have on TurfNet. And at the same time, serving the members with whatever they need. They may need to pay their bill with a credit card. They may need to update their account with us. They may need help posting a job. So when they call the office line, it rings right here in the home office. And we're usually able to dispatch things pretty quickly. And then at the same time, I'm also accounts receivable, so that when we have a month's worth of advertising invoices, those are things that I send out as well.
Okay. And your home base is Kentucky, is that right?
That's a bit of a gray area. It's the Cincinnati area.
Okay.
But I actually bought a home in October of 21 in Fort Thomas, Kentucky,
Gotcha.
Which is directly across the Ohio River from the city of Cincinnati.
Okay.
Funny sidebar on that. You know, Peter founded TurfNet in Skillman, New Jersey. Yep. And John Reitman, our editorial director, lives outside of Lexington in Danville, Kentucky. And from time to time, if we're on a conference call, I asked Peter, I said, did you ever imagine when you founded TurfNet that you would have two offices in the state of Kentucky? So we have a good laugh over that.
Yeah, you got the home office, and then you've got the field offices, right?
Exactly.
So you've been with TurfNet a long time. All three of you have kind of been together for a long time. How long has it been?
So I started with our company in 1997. Okay. We had a resort and real estate golf magazine that was kind of an extension of Golf Week, which we owned at the time. And in about April of 1999, Super News was getting off the ground, and I signed on to handle the advertising, and eventually was the advertising director, sales manager for that magazine. And so we operated that magazine until the end of 2007. But we bought TurfNet, or Peter sold TurfNet to our parent company at the beginning of 2001. So okay. I've basically been affiliated with TurfNet since 2001.
And you hadn't had any previous experience in the turf industry, correct? But obviously journalism was your calling card, if you will.
That's correct. I had a long career, still have, in publishing and advertising sales. Yep. That's what I got into straight out of college. And so it was basically in 1999 when we had the magazine, and visiting our readers, obviously visiting our advertisers, going to the different conferences and trade shows and so forth. That was how I learned about the industry.
Sure. So what? This is a little bit off the script here, but what, over the years, what has been your biggest takeaway from the industry as a whole? What strikes you that's different from other industries that you've served?
I think, and we talk about this a fair amount, is it really does tend to attract some very good, wholesome people. And if you're in the industry, either as a supplier or as a superintendent, you're a pretty good person. You've got good values. You're upfront. You're honest. And if you don't meet those requirements, you tend not to last very long. And we've seen that. Some people have kind of parachuted in from other industries and, maybe they're at a supplier for 2 or 3 years and then they move on for whatever reason.
Interesting. I like that. Okay. So let's start. Like I said, let's start at the start. You had a very unique start into marketing yourself and entrepreneurship and things like that. So tell me about Jon Kiger, the magician.
Okay. So again, grew up here in the Cincinnati area. And in the 70s, there was a Broadway show called The Magic Show. And Doug Henning was the magician. And this got a lot of people interested in magic.
Doug Henning. Wow. I haven't heard that name in a long time.
So anyhow, I, like a lot of other people, decided I would try my hand at some magic. And so at the tender age of 12, I started getting magic tricks. And a little sidebar here, bicycle playing card company is based here in Cincinnati. So one of the people that worked at the playing card company opened up a magic shop literally, across the street from the factory, and was hosting magic lessons and so forth. So at the tender age of 12, I said, well, it's time to start doing this as a bit of a job. So I got business cards. Yes, at 12 years old, I had my first business card that said Jon Kiger Magician with my information on it. And I looked for a niche that needed it. And I thought, how about birthday parties? I said, Mom's doing a birthday party for the kids. She could probably use 30 minutes to set up the cake and ice cream. So that was my pitch. I can keep the kids entertained while you do the cake and ice cream. And I was on my way and really had to promote my career and get the word out. So one of the things that I looked at was local librarians, and there's always a children's librarian. And so for the 2 or 3 regional libraries near my neighborhood, I made them this pitch. I said, look, I'll do a magic show. You can bring out books that have magic tricks or magicians' biographies. And the marketing part of it was, I just have one request, that as the parents come to pick up their kids, I get to meet them, shake their hand, and hand them one of my business cards and let them know that I'm available for birthday parties. And it just took off. So literally, I've been doing publicity and promotion since the tender age of 12.
Amazing. Not nervous or anything? That was just something you had to do.
Something I had to do. And, you'd think about public speaking, being comfortable in front of a group. And I'll go all the way back to that original thing. You're in front of an audience. Granted, It's 8-year-olds at a birthday party, but it's still an audience.
Yeah.
And things can go wrong. The trick doesn't work, or this falls off the table or whatever, and you got to deal with it.
That's a great point. And I think, that's a loss in our industry, but also in the society as a whole. Is my opportunity was not magician, but I started toting bags at the local country club at 10. And I think that was, besides the cash in my pocket to go to the arcade, I think that was by far the best experience that I got out of it was the requirement to interact with members of the club. And, these people are business people in the community, and invaluable opportunity at a young age, right?
I agree.
Yeah, really cool. Really cool. So, kind of the usual fare from there. You did a paper route, which I think, anybody under 40 is like, what the heck is a paper route? But I think that's how a lot of us cut our teeth to make, to rub a couple of nickels together, and I certainly did as well. And it's thankless work, but again, you're collecting billing, you're interacting with the community, and there's opportunity to learn and to grow from that too, right?
Well, and one of the things that stood out is there was a neighborhood newspaper that was a weekly, and my friend and I split the route, which was about 150 homes. So each of us had about 75.
Wow.
And we got paid a penny a paper. And we determined that they would just literally put an envelope with $1.54 or whatever the heck it was in with the newspapers. We were to deliver that Wednesday or whatever it was. And we decided that the best way to do it was that we would each take it every other week. So we would at least get the dollar bill and the 50-cent piece that they put in there. And that went on for a couple of years. But the biggest high point was, and it ties into the magician thing, there was a breakfast with Santa Claus. And I was the entertainment in addition to Santa Claus. And that was on the front page of this newspaper that I was delivering door to door. And so Jon Kiger to showcase the Breakfast with Santa Claus. And I look back and I'm like, there's not many people that have shared a bill with the man in red. Yes, with the big guy.
That's great. That's great. Oh, so funny.
And I think I still have that clipping somewhere. I'll have to dig it up, but
I'd love to see that. That's it's just things like that. At the time, you don't think anything of it, but it's all woven into the fabric of who we are today, right? I mean, it's
exactly
really cool. Okay, so you leave Cincinnati, you go to a boarding school. Another thing that's not in the vernacular these days. So what? There were some things that happened there that I think are pretty interesting as well.
Exactly. My father grew up in Lancaster, Ohio, which is a small town outside of Columbus.
Okay.
And he spent 3 years there. And the students that apply to Phillips Exeter have to interview either on campus with an admissions representative or in the field with an alumni representative. And so my father was the Southwestern Ohio representative if somebody needed an interview but couldn't get to school. And so the school sent the school newspaper every week, and it would come in the mail and I would read about it. So I would get to know the school, and I was doing pretty well in middle school and kind of had a worldly view of things. So the bottom line is I applied and got in, and I was the second generation. He was the class of 51. I was the class of 81. And one of the biggest things was that I was looking forward to was they had a campus radio station. And so from the moment I set foot on campus, I said, whatever I need to do to get to work on this radio station, I'm going to do. So I got approved and got the license. But of course, the new guy gets all the lousy shows. So classes started about 8:25, and we had to be on the air a certain number of hours, according to the FCC. So the morning shift was 7:15 to 8:15, and that went to all the new people, of course, because no student from age 14 to 17 is listening to the radio at 7:15 in the morning,
right.
let alone running it.
Right.
And so the only saving grace was that the building that the radio station was in, of course, in the basement, because radio still doesn't get much respect, was adjacent to the dining hall. So to kill two birds with one stone, I would put on a very long song, usually like Leonard Skinner, Freebird, and go next door, get my breakfast, and bring it back down to the studio. So God forbid something would skip. And I know you young people out there don't know what a skipping LP is, but look it up.
But I think every DJ or every radio personality in history has the song that he or she would pick to give get him time to get to the bathroom or in your case go grab something to eat. That's great.
Exactly. So that was my main extracurricular activity, and I bring that up because it really was a catalyst for a lot of the things that I'm still doing today.
Sure.
When it came time to look at universities, I had applied to University of Florida because they had a strong journalism communications college. And it didn't have anything to do with the fact that I left New Hampshire for spring break in March, and there were still piles of snow like 15 feet high. And when I was visiting my parents in Florida and on the campus of University of Florida in Gainesville, that there were co-eds sunning themselves in the pools next to the dormitories.
Yep.
And once again, this was prior to email. So I literally just walked into the admissions office. And I said, hey, I applied, haven't heard anything. A woman went down and probably went through a filing cabinet and said, yeah, you're in.
No kidding.
That was the start of it. And like I said, they had still do very strong communications and journalism college, and quickly sort of zeroed in on an advertising major and a business minor. And then that's what pretty much launched the career in publishing. I went to work for a magazine straight out of college, and it's been magazines, publications, and media ever since.
So I hold on that thought. We have to get back to that. But so the boarding school was in New Hampshire. You were in Cincinnati still. So and you elected to go to boarding school. Isn't that normally something that you're forced to do?
That is the perception, but it was not even the reality back in the 70s.
Okay.
It's not being sent away to boarding school. It was a voluntary thing.
Okay.
So, and then it was great. I mean, I literally was on campus and in a dormitory with people from all over the country and in some cases all over the world. And then what was really fun is if you fast forward another 30 years or so, I turned out to be the middle generation of the Kiger family, in that my younger son, David, was kind of on a similar track, doing well in school, had a kind of worldly view of things. And he applied and was in the class of 2014. So awesome. It was really neat to look back. My father was still living when he learned that David was going to go to school there. So that was really neat. And like I said, to be able to see David's experience relative to mine, and even looking back to my father's, I mean, literally, my dad was on varsity basketball in 1951, and David could go into the gym and see his grandfather's picture up on the wall.
Oh, so that's awesome.
We talked about this, Kevin. I mean, it's just like you're Roy Firestone on ESPN. You're going to make me cry.
Right. I'm not going to do that. We're going to move on. So let's get, you warned me of that. And I said, well, if I make you cry, you can guarantee that I'll follow, but luckily we don't have video for me to be watching you right now. But so we get into newspapers, we get into print advertising, things like that. I'm going to fast forward and then we're going to go back. But,
okay.
It's 2025. Obviously, the world's changed. Your world of media has changed a lot. Give me a little looking glass of 10, 20 years into the future. What does it look like with, you've got tools, you've got, obviously, we talked about that thing called what was it? A newspaper.
Right.
I mean, just in our adult lifetimes, things have changed dramatically. Where do you see it going?
I think we've got at least a full generation who have grown up with the automation of mobile devices. And along with the mobile devices is the instant gratification. I'm shopping for something. I'm on Amazon. It's here tomorrow.
Yeah. Why is it
even
here
this
today?
afternoon?
I don't understand.
Yes. So I would say that it just a big focus on immediacy, a big focus on responsiveness.
Yeah.
And just capitalizing on how people consume information. And a perfect example is when we started online with TurfNet, which was in 2008. A lot of the advertising that we had on there was based on how people would view it on their PC.
Yeah.
And now well over 50%, probably closer to 70% of our content is viewed on mobile devices. So we made adjustments. We've also advised people that, hey, this is how it's going to show up. So don't put too much in the ad and what have you. So I would just say, with a focus on immediacy, being nimble, and just trying to keep up with how people are consuming information.
And fossils like you and I are just adapting as quickly as we can and try to keep up with the Joneses, right?
I guess so.
Yeah. I going back, I don't think I was member number one, but I definitely had an early subscription to was it a monthly magazine?
It was the TurfNet was the monthly newsletter.
Monthly newsletter, yeah. Yeah, and that was, I mean, for Peter to have the foresight to start that and get that up and running was really cool, because the industry didn't really have anything that wasn't association driven until then. That was more personal than some of the trade magazines, right?
I agree, and again, the foresight that he had to found a community, to have communication at the heart of that. To have friendship, the friendships that have been developed by people from disparate parts of the country,
right?
Is just you just can't put a price on that, or you can't measure the impact of that.
And so the decision to go away from the print newsletter was in 2008.
No, I was talking about our magazine that was Golf Week Super News, which we started in 1999. But after we migrated the best of the material of the content from the print magazine to the TurfNet website, Peter's monthly newsletter continued past that until, I don't know, I want to say maybe 2012, 2013 or so.
Got it. Okay. All right. Now let's pick up where we left off. So we're out of college. You're working for a publication at that point?
Yes. I basically was from 1985 until '97 was just with a variety of mostly trade magazines, business to business publications.
Okay.
And again, that certainly served me well. Calling on businesses about how they can grow their business. I had some experience in consumer publications, which was also, quite interesting. I mean, I represented Popular Mechanics for a couple years. I represented Sports Afield, which is no longer around, but, and you can imagine those each have their trade shows. So
Yeah.
Being exposed to some of those trade shows and some of those other industries was pretty interesting. But for the most part, I always kind of came back to business. It seemed to be a little less cluttered. You weren't competing against so many things. Again, on the consumer side, you're competing against not just other magazines, but other, TV networks, radio, other programs like that. Whereas with business to business, it's pretty straightforward how you help people market their products.
Interesting. Well, that's a cool variety. Okay, so let's see. I put a star next to this. Just for those of you listening, Jon gave me a nice, as one of my bosses used to call it, an epistle of what we were going to talk about, and I don't know that we're going to get to it all because it's all really interesting, and I'll find a bunch of side roads to go off on. But you went back to school as an adult, for what?
Well, for a number of years, we started our TurfNet trips in about 2009. And of course, I was involved in helping to plan our different functions. So I really had an eye towards hospitality, had relocated up here to the Cincinnati area. COVID was starting to kind of clamp down on things. And I said, well, maybe as part of this, new location, I try and get some classes in hospitality. And I got on the phone with the dean of the local Cincinnati State University. And she must have thought she had a live one, because she said, what if we took all of your credits from when you were in school as an undergrad and applied them, so you don't need to do any of the prerequisites? You're just doing the hospitality courses, and you might be able to get a degree in 3 or 4 semesters. And my first premise was, now we're just talking about passing these courses, right? Not a particular grade point average. So she said, no. Just as long as you took the course and you passed it, we'll take that.
Right. So
I like to say that they went to an Iron Mountain facility in the Salt Flats of Utah to get my transcript from 1985.
Right.
And so sure enough, in the summer of 2020, I was a student at Cincinnati State University in the hospitality program.
On campus or online?
It was all online.
Okay.
In fairness, about 2/3 of the classes were already being offered online. So it was only about 1/3 of them that really had to make that transition. And I went in with both feet. There was a student activities representative that wanted to get student government set back up. So I ran for and won student senator for our little college there. And we had our weekly meetings about student government, and still pulling off 2 or 3 projects there. But it really gave an insight. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, despite my father being an accountant and in finance his whole career, I was never really a numbers guy. And so, but the hospitality program required 2 accounting courses, and I was just grinding them out. And even at one point, I even begged her. I said, can I skip this next accounting one? Put me into marketing or something. She's like, no. This next one is managerial accounting. It's better. And sure enough, by the end of those 2 accounting courses, all of a sudden I'm getting a financial statement from our home office, and I'm like, wait a second. I
understand this now.
I understand it now. Exactly. So, and that's been a catalyst. Like I said, I handle accounts receivable for TurfNet. So I'm doing all of our invoicing, and it just fit right very well. So again, 3 or 4 semesters in, and I got my degree. And, it was just a really neat experience, a great way to spend the time during COVID, to be disciplined, meet the deadlines, interact with other students in a similar program, and so forth.
And obviously you're still carrying your job at the same time. So you're kind of juggling things, and you're the, you're the student senator in your 50s. And what was the Rodney Dangerfield movie that
yes, Back to School,
right?
Yes. Back to School.
That's the picture I have in my mind of Jon Kiger in school, but technically you weren't in school. So that's
right.
That's cool. That's cool. Kirk Kastner, our sales manager, recently did something similar. He went back and got his master's, his MBA, and doing that while juggling 3 young kids and a territory. And I don't know how you guys pull that off, because it's obviously your kids were grown, but that's a long day. That's a lot to do. So my hat's off to you. That's really cool. Okay, so let's jump ahead now. So your parent company bought TurfNet in 2001, right?
Yes.
And then so let's pick up there, and what changes occurred after that acquisition and going forward.
It was actually something where we sort of let Peter was sort of running the things as he had done all the way up to that point. There was no real wholesale changes.
Yeah.
I would say, again, the biggest change was those 6 or 7 years later, when the decision was made, hey, we're going to drop the magazine and do as much content and advertising as we can on the website. And honestly, that decision was a good at least 5 and maybe 6, 8, 10 years ahead of a lot of media outlets. And so we were literally telling people how to make the most of their online advertising. And I know a lot of it was also just walking them through, how does it work? What do you put up there? Hey, here's a great idea. Instead of just building awareness with a full page ad, you'll see that 37 people went to your website based on you advertising with us. So there was a lot more concrete stuff that we could do there. And I remember it was interesting because we did have a staff for the magazine. We had some editorial people, a couple of other sales reps, and Peter, set us all up with logins. And I was one of the early adopters within our company that would go on the forum and, hear what was important to people and see who was, posting and who was prominent. And I remember looking up and I'm like, none of the editors from the magazine were logging into TurfNet. And, they'd have these weekly editorial meetings where it'd be like, what are we going to cover next time? And they'd be sort of scratching their heads. And so when I heard about this and I saw this, I was like, guys, we've got this thing in-house. Log in.
We've got the data all
you can put your finger on the pulse of the industry with a couple of clicks.
Yeah.
So again, and so like I said, it was just but the main transition was that end of 2007 and the beginning of 2008. when we closed the magazine and brought the content and the advertising over to the website.
Now, the magazine, are you talking Super News or are you talking the TurfNet?
No, I was talking Super News, the Super News magazine. The monthly newsletter for TurfNet kept on until about 2012 or 13.
Got it. Yeah, I'm kind of running parallel in my head of how we're doing this. So, had it been a nervous moment, because I mean there's a certain amount of tradition and the way we've always done it sort of mentality, but I think you hit something that's really, really important, and we talk a little bit about it internally, but the ability to capture that data with electronic versions versus just throwing print out in the world and seeing what sticks, it's incredibly valuable and powerful, isn't it?
Yes. And I remember, like literally the decision was made to close the magazine. The last issue was December of 2007.
Right.
I was at the Carolinas show when I got the phone call, and I'm like, oh, so all these people that I talked to in the last day about their advertising program on the magazine, whatever. And then Peter and I kind of scrambled. We did a couple of the pop-up banners for our display at the Ohio Turfgrass Foundation, and that was kind of when we sort of let the word out of what was going to be going on.
Right. Interesting. All right. So now we're 2007. You're making a shift in business. So what happened next?
Well, part of it was sort of how we looked at the program, and we did import the correspondence. Randy Wilson had been with us since the beginning of the magazine. Frank Rossi, the same.
Yep.
So that was a pretty easy transition. They went from writing for the magazine to writing for the website, but Randy had a lot of video production. So, he started doing these videos. And that's where we thought, wait, we've got a website, we can host videos, etc. We had contracted with someone, which was a bit of a carryover from the publication days. And that arrangement just wasn't working out that well. So sometime in, I think, early 2009, we said, look, John Reitman's going to different things. Peter's in this area. I'm doing sales calls in different cities. Can we start doing some of these videos ourselves? And we did have a focus group as we made this transition, and it was in Atlanta, and it was a professional thing. I mean, there was an outside moderator, and we had a really good discussion. And Anthony Williams said, well, there's something in the TurfNet forum, tips and tricks, that might work well as a video series. And that was literally the catalyst. So in the spring of 2009, we were each armed with video cameras and lav mics and so forth. And we would, contact whoever was, kind of an active member in the area and say, hey, how about those 3 or 4 ideas that you put in the forum? Can I film those? And so once again, I'm learning about video production. I'm meeting these people in person at their facilities, meeting their staffs. Maybe, there was an assistant that put together this thing. So the assistant's on camera, and we were off and running. So that was, and literally, I mean, I've lost count, but it was like 400 or 500 videos that we did over the course of the 5 or 6 or 7 years that we kept doing that. And so, it was just an ability to do some different types of content while that was relevant. And then we would do some feature things. I mean, I think of just even the different sports that I did. You've heard about the hockey challenge up in the Niagara Falls area. So one year I went up for that and, interviewed Peter as the coach, interviewed some of the participants, and then tried to keep up with a hockey puck on video. Brand new respect for the people that do that for a living.
That's amazing.
And then there was a group of superintendents in Minneapolis, and they were in a weekly curling league. So another ice-based sport. I'm filming curling in Minnesota.
So was the travel piece a big part of how you did things prior to this launch of more video content?
Well, by the travel piece, you mean traveling to these different places?
Yeah.
So as a matter of course, I would try and see most advertisers in person a couple times a year. Those would be some key cities, like some of the chemical companies are up in the Carolinas, Raleigh, Greensboro, that area. And so as I would, book a 2 or 3 day trip to see these advertisers, I could also, spread out the expenses over some of these videos. And just, I'd film somebody's course at 7:30 in the morning, and I'd have a meeting with a chemical company at 1 in the afternoon. So it was just leveraging the fact that some of the travel was already built in, as well as some of the things that Jon Reitman and Peter were already doing.
I got it. That makes sense. So, okay. So now you take, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but now you hatch the plan to take things international.
Yes.
So let's get into that.
Okay. So,
I think by hatch the plan, I think you hatched the plan, didn't you?
Yes, I did hatch the plan. So, 2007, there was a golf week trip to Ireland, and I was able to go on that and take one of our good customers along. And I'll never forget this. We were at Lahinch, and we were leaving Lahinch, and I looked out the bus window and I said, wow, that looks like a brand new maintenance facility. I wouldn't mind seeing that. And that just sort of stuck in my mind. So fast forward another year, and Exeter, my boarding school, had a service project where alumni were invited to come and spend a week in Ireland helping out an alumnus with one of his local projects. And so I, carved out the time to go that in June. And this is one of these classic things, but it's a real window into, our little operation here. And I went to Peter and I said, hey, I'm already going to be in Ireland for a week for this service project. So what if we did a 3 or 4 part video series on greenkeeping in Ireland? Maybe I just extend it by 2 or 3 days and film it and so on. And he said something to the effect of, if you get a sponsor for it, you can do whatever you want. And it was like a comic book, and the words, you get a sponsor, you can do whatever you want, were still hanging in the air practically. And literally like a week or 10 days later, I had the sponsor. We were covering my additional expenses. We were doing this. And so that was the first part of the international. And I found a local video crew in Ireland and ran around with them, and which once again was a cultural experience. They didn't know any, probably never set foot on a golf course. So I brought the sort of, this is what we need to cover, and they were this is how we're going to cover it from a technical standpoint. And it was a wonderful partnership. And they learned enough in the first 2 years of doing this that the third year I wasn't able to go over there, and they literally filmed the whole series on their own.
Oh, wow.
The interviews and all that. So, but the catalyst was, after I did the first filming in 2008, I said, well, the next extension is a TurfNet members trip to Ireland. So we got things together. We, lined up the courses, lined up the hotels and the transportation. And for a number of years, then our members trip was born. And once again, we'd planned it at a time when the superintendents were usually, out of the summer. It was usually like late September or October.
Right.
And that was a really nice catalyst for people to be able to get a reward at the end of the season. A lot of times they'd bring their spouses who either played golf and joined into the golf, or if they didn't play golf, we used the bus to take the non-golfers around to the different tourist attractions while we were out on the course. And it was just really a good, thoughtful extension of how to serve the members and provide a really special experience. And again, we had some suppliers that were sponsors that helped support it. And they obviously got the exposure to the people that were on the trip and that sort of thing. So yeah, a lot of fun.
So I'm curious if you're willing to share who was willing to sponsor such a boondoggle that initially that you pinned down.
Well, the original video series was sponsored by Syngenta.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. And I've always regretted not being part of that trip. I thought about it. Our kids were kind of really active at the time, and it just didn't ever seem to coincide with what I was doing. And but I always wanted to take that trip, and I still haven't been across the pond to play any golf or see any of this site. So one of these days, I'll probably have to hit you up for some of the places, the must-see places.
Well, I have quite a bit of experience.
Yes, you do.
Places.
Yes,
so
you do.
Is it time for us? Can we fit in a little sidebar about my summer of 22?
I'm all about sidebars, John.
Okay. So a little background. For a number of years since 2012, we have helped host interns working on golf courses in Ireland. I had obviously contacts with a lot of superintendents over there. They really enjoyed the professional nature of the students coming over from universities, because a lot of their labor is local labor that is just hourly.
Sure.
And they happen to be working the course as a job, not necessarily as the professional aspect of it. So in helping these students get over there, I learned about something called the Working Holiday Authorization Visa, which allowed our students, they would be mostly over there for the summer, but they could stay for up to a year. And the idea is the student bartends or waitresses so that they can travel around and learn the culture and all that.
Sure.
Well, guess who, with his hospitality degree from Cincinnati State University in the fall of 2021, qualified for the Ireland Student Working Holiday Authorization Visa, of which there was no upper age cap, mind you.
Oh, perfect.
So my only regret is that I could not see the look on the Ireland consulate's face in Chicago when the 58-year-old student applied for the working holiday visa. So
outstanding.
Sure enough, the spring of 22, I was approved. And shortly thereafter, I was one of 35 applicants and 11 interviewees, and got one of 2 spots working in the Fáilte Ireland, the National Irish Tourism Board, in the Waterford Tourist Office, spending the summer telling people how to make the most of their time in Ireland. And I was upfront. I think I was even upfront with Peter about hoping to get something like this. And he was very generous. And he said, I know how much you love the country. I know how hard you've worked on your degree. And he said, I can't do anything to stand in the way of you doing this. We'll make it all work. And we did make it work, honestly. Once again, TurfNet, I'm already remote on that. So check that box. And I'd get home from work about 7 o'clock, 2 o'clock Eastern time, plenty of time to follow up with what I needed to. And the ace in the hole, which was also really nice, is we've had a TurfNet intern that's helped me, who's based here in Cincinnati. And he's worked for 2 or 3 summers off and on, just membership updates and so forth. So he knew his way all over the TurfNet website and the administrative section. And he needed a place to live. So he moved into my home and the office. And I gave him, just a dirt cheap rental rate just to really kind of cover the, whatever. And I said, the only thing is, when that phone rings, you answer, TurfNet, this is Griffin. How may I help you? And so if somebody needs something routine, you can dispatch it right there. And there was a handful of things, that did need to be mailed out and so forth. So he handled that. But like I said, the office was covered. I was able to, I sold a couple of pretty decent ad programs from Ireland, that summer.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, it was just really fun to be embedded in the community that I'd enjoyed visiting for so long.
That's outstanding. Why not, right? If you can juggle all that stuff, why not try it? And you've had opportunities to have your kids involved with some of the trips, and are any of them in the business?
No.
How about journalism?
No.
Okay.
The oldest one, Jonathan, got a degree in business, and he's been in Nashville since about 2016.
Okay.
Now I start to feel like my own father, because my father could never quite explain to anybody, or I don't think he ever understood exactly what I did.
Right.
So my son in Nashville works for RTS, and he's a sales manager there, helping different freight operators with some fuel savings programs. And my younger son, David, the one that I said went off to Exeter, this is where the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He got a degree in hospitality at Cornell, which actually was pretty cool. There were a lot of Frank Rossi visits as we would visit him and so forth.
Sure.
And then he got a master's of accounting. And he is with a venture capital company in Dallas. So I've got one in Nashville, one in Dallas. But as they were growing up, of course, all the summer vacations and all the trips would usually coincide with some TurfNet work. And we went up to Canada. My family for many years had a place on Georgian Bay, which sadly is no longer available. But the area was just so cool and so fun. So both of them got an individual trip to Toronto in the Canadian area. And we filmed with Jim Flett and a couple other courses. And those are two that stand out, because there was a thing where Jim Flett was talking about how members could test the bunker sand. And we were videoing this again for Trips and Tricks. Well, we didn't have a member. So David Kiger is there as the substitute member raking the bunker on
you grab a wedge.
Exactly. And then another one was there was a tip and trick about something to update your staff room with a TV or monitor or a whiteboard or something. Well, again, we're filming this thing at like 3 p.m. So there's maybe 2 people on staff that are still in the maintenance facility. So stand in is Jonathan Kiger sitting at the staff table.
So when you roll the credits, you've got the extras, right?
Yes. But I think the funniest one that comes to mind was we were living in Atlanta at the time. We had a family of there were 4 of us, and we'd like to vacation in Fripp Island, South Carolina, which is outside of Beaufort, South Carolina. But from Atlanta, you got to go through Savannah to get to Fripp Island. And Wiedeman's North American headquarters are based in Savannah. And it was always a convenient way to call on Will Wolferton at Wiedemann. So literally on the way to vacation, the entire family, including 2 dogs, are in the parking lot of Wiedemann, North America, while John Dad goes in to make a sales call.
I did something similar, although I wasn't making a sales call, but I had always wanted to see Cypress Point, and Jeff Marco and I had known each other for a long time, and we were on a family trip to my in-laws in Arizona, and me being the adventurer, I finally convinced my wife, hey, let's make this about the journey and not the destination. And so we actually drove kind of a combination of I-5 and the 101, going through Portland, down into LA, and then across to Phoenix. Well, one of the stops was in Monterey, and I'm sure you've been to Cypress, and the sign for the club is about 8 by 12 or something, and Jeff said, meet me at the sign, and there's the kids and my wife in the SUV, and he says, I said, what do I do with these guys? Well, we're touring the golf course.
Right.
And he said, oh, there's a bunch of seals down on the beach just up the road there. Have them just go down there and they'll love it. And they had a blast. And I got a tour of Cyprus at the time. And it's funny how we kind of wedge in family trips with business. And I know my wife is always trying to separate the two, but sometimes it just works out that way, doesn't it?
Right. And I'd be remiss when I'm talking about my 2 sons without mentioning how much they enjoy playing golf. And they actually put me to shame with the number of rounds that they play. My son in Nashville is a member of a local club there. David does a bit of, he plays a fair amount around Dallas and where he travels around. And I think their grandfather was very intent on introducing golf to the kids. And the two of them are definitely running with it. And I'd say one of my proudest moments, and again, Roy, I'm probably going to break out, but when my son first joined the club in Nashville, that's a big undertaking. You've got to apply, you've got to have the money to put it in and so forth. And he was so proud and pleased to show me his club. And I was so proud and pleased that he had made it to the point where that's something that could be an important part of his life.
That's really cool.
So that first round was really, really, if somebody said top 5 meaningful rounds of golf in your life, and you can imagine some of the places that I played with some of these trips and stuff, that's up there in the top 5.
Yeah. I share your, I guess, shame that at least my oldest son, my youngest is starting to get that way too, but, my oldest son was a baseball player through college. And baseball didn't coincide very well with the golf season, and so he never really took it up. And now now the baseball's over. He is all about golf. And why didn't you have us play golf when we were younger? And shoot, he had access to some of the great golf courses in the Western U.S. And I said, well, you were on the diamond. You were busy with baseball, and it's not only embarrassing how much more he plays, but how much further he hits it than I do. So I can definitely share in your shame that you can't keep up with him anymore.
Right.
Okay, so let's. I knew we weren't going to get through this, John.
Okay.
So the international flair isn't just Ireland,
right?
And the interest. Let's talk about South America a little bit, because that's pretty fascinating as well, and we're going to have to pick up the pace if we're going to get anywhere close to finishing.
Absolutely. So, my mother was born in Brazil, moved up to the Cleveland area about the time she was school aged.
Okay.
She has a bunch of cousins down there. There's a lot of generational parallels. The cousins' kids are my age, their grandkids are my son's age, etc. So late 2008, 2009, my son David says, you only need one parent to get Brazilian citizenship, which of course my mom had. So I applied for and got both the Brazilian birth certificate and passport. Fast forward, now both of my sons have one parent with Brazilian citizenship. So the two of them have Brazilian citizenship. And we went down, and we would always connect. The cousins are great. We've got cousins in Sao Paulo and Rio, and they host us and take us around and drive us where we need to go and so forth. But 2014 was the World Cup. And my son, again, being the inventive person that he is, oh no, we're not going to be in the lottery with all the Americans trying to go to the World Cup. We were in the Brazilian lottery for tickets for the World.
We have citizenship.
We got citizenship, baby. So we go down there, and one really cool side trip is we were in Sao Paulo, and Rick Hollanda was at Santa Paz Hacienda, and really high-end exclusive club. We took a taxi out, and before I let the taxi go back to Sao Paulo, I said, Rick, how are we going to get back? Do I need to keep the taxi here? He said, no, 2 guys are coming to call on me. They're from Sao Paulo. They can take you back. No problem.
Okay.
Turns out the 2 of them, in addition to being the new representative for a company introducing a product down in Brazil, they were the sports turf construction designing company for World Cup soccer fields.
No kidding.
Guess who already has this video stuff? So this is the magic of TurfNet. Okay. We were able to film World Cup soccer videos at a golf course and make it look decent. So I did 2 interviews about building the courses, what was involved in building the pitches, and literally got all that information up, and we launched that while the World Cup was still going on.
Jeez.
And so then fast forward 2 years later, Rio is hosting the Olympics. My son is doing an internship for NBC, so he's working it for NBC, hosting their VIPs. We already had tickets again, the Brazilian connection, and a client wants to have a special thing on golf returning to the Olympics in Rio. So I'm down there working for TurfNet, covering golf's return to the Olympics. The only problem is Neil Cleverly, the superintendent, has been evasive because, well, you're contacting me 2 months before this world-class, worldwide event.
It's kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, kind of a big deal. So not to be held back, I saw Neil when he was at the first day of the turn of the competition, and he was literally in a utility vehicle with 2 or 3 of the staff. And I think you could describe it as I jumped in front of the utility vehicle to get his attention, literally. And this is, again, where my son's insight came through. We had a Brazilian phone to correspond with all the stuff, okay? But most people that would be down there would just have the American phone and use it when they can, or use data and all this stuff.
Sure.
So Neil says, I've gotten your emails. I just haven't had a chance to respond. And you're not going to get, you're not going to be able to follow up with me unless you have a Brazilian phone. I said, Neil, I have a Brazilian phone. What's your number? Let's get together. Interview was set. And then same thing. Didn't want to get into what's the type of turf? What did you do? What were your things?
Yeah.
This event was going on. And I said, this interview is going to be really short if I come back to all the stuff that's been covered by the other outlets. I focused on, what does it mean to you to have this event here?
Sure.
This hard guy that was sort of like a Navy SEAL, the UK equivalent of a Navy SEAL, basically. And this was his second career. And he softened up, and he really enjoyed sharing the emotional part of hosting that.
Very cool.
And it was just a pleasure. We met up at the next conference, and we've been friends ever since. But like I said, the lengths to which TurfNet will go in terms of hopping in front of a utility vehicle to get the story.
Literally risking your life for the scoop, right?
Exactly. But it was a wonderful experience. And of course, it was great to be down there with David as well.
So did you carry a press pass for that week, or
no? I just had regular tickets.
Okay.
We had gotten some regular tickets, I think. No, I didn't have press anything. So
and that meeting with Neil then got you involved more heavily with Biga, right?
Actually, no. The biggest stuff was a little earlier. It was the beginning of 2016, and again, pretty funny story. Met Sammy Strutt. She handled the speakers.
How am I doing on segueing you into the next story? Am I
very
doing
good?
Okay,
very good. Excellent.
Good.
Yes. So Biga, of course, is the UK Greenkeepers Association.
Yep.
And I met Lee Strutt on another trip, just incidental. And I met Sammy at maybe San Antonio, whatever it was, the 2015 show or 2016 show.
Yep.
And she sent an email that said, hey, if you want to present, all you have to do is come up with the topics. The membership votes on the topics. And then if enough members want to hear your topics, you're on the program. So I thought, well, get out of your comfort zone, do a little speaking. Sure. And of course, you're not going to do the speaking to the Georgia Association because you live in Atlanta. You're Jon Kiger. You're going to look internationally.
Yeah. What's the old saying? An expert is one who comes from greater than 50 miles away, right?
Exactly.
You check that box pretty well.
Yeah. So anyhow, I said, well, I don't have the turf grass background. Obviously, I can't talk that technical stuff. But she had kind of indicated that they were trying to get away from some of the technical stuff and a little more career-oriented stuff. So I had 3 topics. The first one was be ready for the media in good times and bad. Yep. And the other 2 were sort of career things that I'd picked up about resumes or interview techniques and all. And just I picked up on enough in the UK that those are techniques that the younger folks really could use some help with. Lo and behold, I'm picked for all 3 presentations. The only thing that comes up is there were no presentations.
I was going to say, which you had never done before.
Exactly. So
you named the title and that was it.
Exactly. So not that I'm a procrastinator, but I do recall being holed up in a hotel room and having a certain Peter McCormick helping me with the PowerPoint.
Right.
And the first presentation was probably Monday. And once again, I got this itinerary, but I'm like, put it in a file. I need to finish these things. Go to the speakers thing. Oh, you're presenting at the Turf Managers Conference tomorrow in a Victorian era theater that's been around since the 1850s. And all of a sudden, I look at the program and I'm on stage with 3 PhDs.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, exactly. So as if there wasn't enough pressure to get this thing right, Jon Kiger, is sharing the stage with 3 PhDs. And but that was great. And like I said, I had a good time. They really did respond. And the cool thing is I get feedback. 2 weeks later, somebody sent me a note, said, I was in your session. We had somebody with their 25th anniversary. It was covered in the local paper. I would have never thought of that had you not done that in the presentation. Same thing with the interview techniques and the resumes. Guys would send me a note. Hey, I was just in your resume thing. I got a new job. I used some of the things I learned with you, and that made me stand out. So that started a couple more years of speaking. And again, the catalyst, I'm at the Biga conference in 2016. And I'm like, just like I said about Ireland, I said, there's got to be some guys in the States who would like an alternative to the education.
Right.
And in 2017, we had 6. 2018, we had a bunch of guys that had all worked at a particular course. We had something like 18 people coming with the TurfNet trip to Biga.
Wow.
So again, just kind of thinking out of the box, trying to get some alternatives, having the social aspect, having the friendship aspect, and it just all fell into place.
It's interesting to see as time goes on how many American superintendents are pursuing their master greenkeeper certification. That number seems to be growing more every year, which is neat because it bridges that relationship between the two continents
Yep.
really well. I think I was talking to Gary Grigg last fall at a association meeting. He's still pretty active in our local association,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about I think it was, I want to say 95 or 96 when he got his master greenkeeper.
Yep.
It's been a while, and it's something he's really, really proud of because I think he may have been the first American. Does
That
that sound
sounds
right?
about right, I'd
Yeah.
say.
But he was talking. I don't think he was real impressed with my comeback, but he said, it was all essay questions, um, and he said the first one kind of threw me back. He said the nomenclature's different, but he said, describe annual meadow grass, and he looked at me and I said, well, I could have done that in one sentence. He says, what do you mean? I said, it's great till it isn't. and he kind of looked at me funny, and his hearing isn't what it used to be, but he kind of looked at me funny. He goes, "Huh, I guess that would have been a pretty good way to summarize it."
Too funny.
But it's cool to see those guys and a lot of young guys pursuing that. I know there was a pretty good contingent that went over this year, and a couple good friends of mine. So pretty neat to see that camaraderie and communication between the two nations.
Definitely.
Okay, so I actually got through your notes, John.
Wow.
Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Or is it time for the lightning round?
Oh gosh.
Where's TurfNet going to be in 10 years before we wrap up? What's it going to look like? It's cool for me to see that you've been able to maintain your relevance while shifting gears pretty dramatically a few times. So where are you going to be?
I think 10 years is too far to project. I would say, there's
15 minutes, right?
Yeah. No, I would say within the next 3 to 5 years. Again, probably just making adjustments so it's easier to use on the fly.
Right.
Keeping the core benefits that so many people see as value, the job listings, the used equipment for sale listings. That's a game changer. It's just like it's just like either trading in a used car or selling it, in your neighborhood. The trade-in value that these folks are offered doesn't come anywhere close to what they could do. And we try to make it seamless. We even have a shipper that's an advertiser that lets people know that they can get a sprayer from here to there pretty reasonably. And they have experience with that. Yeah. It's called Load 'em Up.
Okay.
And again, that's right there on the used equipment sections and in our emails and stuff.
I guess I'm not shopping for used equipment anymore, so I don't really pay attention to
that. But I still think there is always a place for a professional community.
Yep.
There is always a place for people to seek advice from others. And again, I think our industry is unique in that, courses that would be considered competitors in the same town, but the superintendents can share, hey, I've got a problem with this disease. Do you have it? Yes. How are you facing it, et cetera? And so that unique aspect, I think, will play out in terms of the importance of this special community.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Okay, so let's wrap up, and this has been great. I love that we haven't really talked turf a whole lot for an hour.
Okay.
It's, I've got another interview tomorrow that I'm doing with a gentleman that's been all over the world. In fact, there'll be some connections if you happen to listen. There'll be some connections that you'll probably recognize. So I like these off the beaten path sort of conversations. Okay, so like I said, I have a few questions at the end that are just impromptu, whatever pops into your head. There's no wrong answer. So if, for you, I've kind of customized it.
Okay.
This is a two-part question. Favorite courses that you've played, both international and domestic?
Ooh, international. If the favorite course that I've played, and I'll preface this by saying, if somebody said you could only play one course for the rest of your life in Ireland, which would it be? County Louth Golf Club in Baltray, just about an hour north of Dublin.
Why?
It's the whole package.
It is.
Beautiful piece of land.
Okay.
Friendly, I mean, everything in Ireland is pretty friendly, but this just has the vibe, and it's just my favorite place to play.
Okay.
So,
excellent. How about domestic?
Ooh, domestic.
Maybe it's your kids' club since you don't have to pay much to play.
Yeah, that's up there. What would be, there's a course that really does a nice job, and it's going to sound like, John, you've played a lot of really neat upscale places, but there's a course. It's a city of Cincinnati course called California Golf Course. And I've hosted an event that I do for the Irish Heritage Center of Cincinnati, go figure, there. And they too are just the friendliest. I mean, again, I've put on events, golf tournaments all over, and they just are the whole package of being friendly and flexible and accommodating and so forth. So
awesome.
It's a bit of, like I said, and it's a city of Cincinnati municipal course. It's in great condition, and just friendly and accessible and close. So it ticks a number of those boxes.
So are you giving a shout out to the superintendent since it's in great condition?
Oh, no? We'll go on. So,
okay. All right. So with that, then dream foursome.
Oh, dream foursome.
Don't have to be alive.
Okay, Roy, this is where it's happening.
Yeah.
My stepfather.
Yeah.
My father.
Yeah.
And it would have to be a fivesome because it would be my two sons.
Two boys. Love it. Dang it. Why did you have to do that? That's no good. Okay, we're going on to something else. Sorry, Roy. I guess I got you. But I would agree. I think those family opportunities, mine would have to be a sixsome, so with very similar people involved. I'm moving on so I don't lose control of myself here. College or pro sports?
Ooh, college for sure.
Okay. Which
University of Florida, SEC.
Okay.
And
you a hoops fan, football? What's
I mostly follow the football.
Okay.
Right. But I'll pay attention to the college basketball. It's been sort of a revisiting of the futility of Cincinnati sports.
It's kind of like being a Minnesota sport fan, right?
Exactly.
Very similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay, that's cool. With Ireland in mind, this is one I ask all the time: beer, wine, or other for your favorite beverage.
Ooh. Over there is a difference.
I've heard
the Guinness.
Yeah,
the Guinness is it, bar none.
Okay.
And there's a lot of others, but yeah, beer, specifically Guinness.
All right.
In Ireland.
All right. Last one. Hopefully this doesn't end on a downer, but it usually does.
Okay.
Golf has seen a tremendous uptick since COVID started. I mean, there's tons of construction. There's tons more players. Had a conversation on social media the other day about this TGL, the simulator golf. Top Golf before that. There's been a lot of things that I think have fed into some growth in the industry. Are we smart enough to maintain this long term?
I think so. And I sent you another note, and we haven't touched on it, but we can now. I have a side hustle. I bartend 2 nights a week at a local golf simulator bar. It's about 10 minutes from here.
Yep.
And we have Mondays through Thursdays. We have usually 2 leagues, one from 6 to 8, one from 8 to 10. And those are letting the summer league players, again, Cincinnati obviously gets its share of snow and bad weather and cold.
Yep.
So, if some player has a hall pass to play golf in the league in August from 6 to 8, we let them use that hall pass through the winter.
Yeah.
And the golf simulators technology mimics every aspect of it, drive, approach, hazards, putting. And so you can set up, the league exactly the same way. The scoring is done the same way, the competitions, the skins, all that stuff. And what's even better about being in a simulator bar is we've got 4 of these bays in a row. Now, you're in your summer league, you're out with your 3 other players, you're in your foursome, maybe you have a beer with the whole group when you get back.
Yeah.
But you've got 4 bays of 4 players per bay, and somebody makes a 50-foot putt and somebody screams and somebody can just walk over and go, whoa, what happened? Okay. And it really allows the camaraderie and the activity of golf to take place, to continue.
It's the same, only different, right?
Right. And so, there's purists out there that I'm never hitting into a screen, but I'm here to tell you, like literally, I worked last night and there was a group that had their league between 6 and 8 p.m. And I think they're going to break from us in a couple of weeks to go back to playing outdoors. But again, the camaraderie, and these are, I would say, if I had to put an age range on the leagues that I'm familiar with, late 20s to late 30s, and mostly in that mid range.
Yeah.
So that's a good growth. That's not waiting for people to retire to continue to take, to play many rounds. And that's not introducing people to the game with first tee. That's a very active, very vocal, very passionate group of golfers that, should certainly be in a position to carry the growth and the enjoyment forward.
Yeah. And I think that the simulator thing meets that generation with their technological savvy.
Definitely.
My question for Topgolf or any of these other outlets is, what are we doing as the industry of golf on golf courses to bridge that gap? We've got them hooked. Now we need to get them to the golf course, and whether it's 9 holes or 18, that's the one thing about simulator golf is it's quick, right? And can we translate that from an hour and a half to 4.5 hours?
Definitely. I mean, the folks are there. They're playing 9 holes in 2 hours, and they have a regular course that they play in season. The league is their one league night, but they're all individual golfers, or they have their buddies, or they catch up on things.
Yep.
There's an individual that's a golf pro who uses our bays for his instructions. He's got people in there, sometimes 3 or 4 in a row on a weeknight, and they're trying to, improve their skills so that when things start back up, that they're a better player when they get back outside and so forth too. So I think, the areas where it makes sense is where you can't play golf in the winter.
Right.
I don't know how many golf simulator bars there are in Florida. If it is, it's just an add-on to a sports bar or something. It's not the main event. Whereas if you can bring people out and have them, still swing and still, have that good feeling of the competition and being with their friends. Again, I don't see a problem with that. The Topgolf is more of somebody called Topgolf like a bowling alley, but for golf. And the focus on Topgolf is really the food and beverage, and the golf is more of an add-on. And so I don't see Topgolf as much of a growing aspect as I do the simulators. The simulators are mimicking and replicating as close as possible a true golf experience.
Yeah, both offer an opportunity to gateway people onto the golf course. I think it's just a little bit different. Well, interesting. You're in a very, very small minority of positive thinkers with respect to capturing. So I appreciate your positivity.
Okay.
Usually it's a very quick nope.
Right.
We're not smart enough to capture this long term. So I'm glad to hear that somebody's thinking positively about it. So, well, Jon Kiger, I appreciate this. It's been a long time coming, and it lived up to the expectations. Been a great conversation, and hopefully everybody enjoys it. For those of you that might be catching it on YouTube, Jon elected out of the video version of it. So sorry if we're going to have a still photo, but that's just fine. I'm about the conversation. So I think it's been a good hour, and appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure. And of course, we enjoy hosting this on TurfNet.
Yes.
And again, let's do it again sometime and not wait 13 months.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, have a great day. And thanks everyone for tuning in again. Make sure you subscribe so that you get your weekly updates of our podcast, and we'll see you again next week.